and for anyone.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And let me see, the meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with emergency ordinance number 20A, 16, an emergency ordinance to ensure continuity of government during COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are present at this meeting are Tony Pagnuccio, Bill McLaughlin, Sue Friedman, Aaron Gavrilovic, Virginia Newton, Janelle Cockrell, and that's it.
Jimmy Dean.
Jimmy Dean, sorry, I forgot you, Jimmy. Hold on. I had you written down, I just forgot. I was reading off the screen. And then we have, of course, Michaela. Carolyn is the admin, Carolyn Schaefer. We have Jessica Hirsch Bellering and Kevin McDermott. Is Kevin here?
He's here to listen, and if we have any questions for Kevin, but he's just going to be listening for the most part. So.
Okay, and Lucinda, is she staff also?
TJPDC.
I'm sorry.
She's at Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission.
Okay.
I believe she's on the agenda number 4.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Yep.
Oh, right, okay. Thank you. And we got Lucinda and Boris Palchik.
Yes. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent.
Okay. So the first order of business is have the members reviewed the minutes, and are there any changes or updates? I know I was not here last for the June meeting. This is the minutes for the June meeting since we didn't meet in July. If anybody has any comments or questions about the minutes now. Otherwise, do we have to do a vote on this, Michaela?
The minutes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so all in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes approved. So we're going to go right into the Albemarle County Transit Expansion Study, and that'll be Boris Palchik. So Boris, go right ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. So 1 second. Let me know if you guys can see it.
We got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Yeah, so what we want to do today is give a brief update on the study that we've been working on for the past few months. It's an Albemarle County Transit Expansion Study. So I'm with a firm called Foursquare Integrated Transportation Planning. We're the lead consultant on this project, along with another firm called Michael Baker International, and we're working with TJPDC on this project. So we'll start with just a little bit of background information. So this study is a feasibility study as well as an implementation plan for expanding transit service in population employment centers within Albemarle County. So we're actually focusing on 3 specific areas: the county, the Pantops area, the Monticello area, and the US 29 North corridor. So tonight I'm only going to cover the US 29 North part of that. So the map on the right shows the 29 North study area. So it stretches, it essentially begins at the city limits or past the city limits of Charlottesville in the growth area of Albemarle County. It's a very destination rich environment. There's just a partial list of the types of destinations that are within the study area. Several retail centers, the Hollymead Town Center, the airport is in the study area, UVA Research Park, and then the Defense Intelligence Agency is sort of at the northern end of the study area. So what we where we are now and where we began is first looking at the market for transit service in this study area. So we did a market analysis, and the reason we do a market analysis is because we know that transit service is most efficient when you have a certain level of density. So kind of as a rule of thumb, when you have at least 5 people or jobs per acre, that's when fixed route transit service really begins to make sense. And fixed route service does depend on density, but also it depends on the built environment to work. So you need to supporting infrastructure for people to be able to access fixed route transit service, things like sidewalks, crosswalks, direct streets versus cul-de-sacs where people can't get through and the like. So for lower density areas or areas that have challenging pedestrian environments, there's other ways to provide transit service. And this graphic here kind of illustrates that point. As you get more urban, there are more types of transit service that sort of open up to you in terms of feasible service to consider. So once you're in a very dense area with good pedestrian infrastructure, you can consider high frequency service, high capacity service. But as you move more towards suburban and even rural land use, you're really looking at fewer types of transit service that are reasonably going to be an option. So commuter service is one option, and shared mobility is another option. So commuter service is something most people are familiar with. That's like express buses that operate during peak periods only. Shared mobility is a concept that a lot of folks probably aren't familiar with. So I'm going to kind of give a little bit of an overview on what that is. Shared mobility can take a lot of different forms. It can be things like Uber and Lyft service, taxi service, things like that. But recently in the transit industry, when we talk about shared mobility, we talk more and more about what's called microtransit service. So microtransit service is a technology-driven demand response service. Demand response means that it doesn't have a set schedule, it doesn't have set stops. Rather, it's dispatched as needed by the users, by the riders. So microtransit is a technology-driven version of shared mobility. It has a very similar interface to Uber and Lyft. So if anyone's ever used Uber and Lyft, you'll be instantly familiar with how you use microtransit service. The main difference between microtransit and Uber and Lyft is that microtransit typically has a dedicated fleet. So it's not just whatever vehicle shows up with whatever driver. It's an actual dedicated fleet of transit vehicles. They take a lot of different shapes and sizes. You can have small ones in very dense urban areas to more like cutaway buses like Jaunt uses today, and anything in between, vans, minivans. It's an effective approach, especially in auto-oriented environments, because as I mentioned previously with fixed route service, you really do need a pedestrian infrastructure to back up the service for the fixed route service to be most effective. But in auto-oriented environments where sometimes you lack that pedestrian environment, microtransit really can do well where fixed route maybe can't. It's also a very data-rich platform, which because all the trips are dispatched from a smartphone app or a tablet or a computer, there's a lot of information collected. That information can be used later for planning purposes. So as an area grows, you can replace shared ride service with fixed route service if you start to notice patterns developing in the ridership. So when we look at the 29 North study area and we look at the transit potential of the area, we noticed that the areas with the kind of moderate to high transit potential are found primarily south of the Rivanna River. So the Rivanna River is here. It's a little bit hard to see, but in other words, this is another way of saying the highest density and the most supportive land use is found south of the river. There's also some pockets north of that. Obviously, there's the Hollymead area, which has higher densities than some other areas. There's a lot of new developments coming around the airport and north, sort of in the northern section of the study area, the North Point development, the RST development. We're aware of those. So that area there is becoming denser and denser, even if it's not as dense now as some of the areas south of the Rivanna River. At the moment, most areas with a density to support fixed route service do have some amount of fixed route service, whether it's CAT service or Jaunt service. The biggest kind of exception to that is really this area here that is neighborhoods northeast of Rio Road, as well as the Hollymead area. So that's a little bit about the transit potential. We also are looking at the service that's operating in the area now. So there are several routes, both CAT routes and jaunt routes that are serving the area. We are looking at the performance of those routes, and we're also looking at how the market analysis sort of provides context as we look at the service. This is a heat map of what's called demand response service. So jaunt operates both fixed route and demand response service. Demand response service in the case that jaunt currently operates is like paratransit service for people with disabilities, service for seniors. So this is a heat map of where we're seeing that demand response ridership. The way that this kind of plays together with the market analysis is areas where we are predicting transit will materialize, we're seeing that in fact, that is where we're seeing a lot of the ridership today. And so areas that have no service today, we can kind of predict that, you know, where we will see demand based on land use, because if the current land use helps predict the current ridership, land use as it changes, we think can predict, you know, where we would expect to see future ridership. So that's especially important now because this map is showing ridership pre-pandemic on the demand response system. Right now, the ridership looks like this. It's a lot lower. So it's very difficult to draw conclusions at the moment about ridership because it is so much lower than typical because of the pandemic. So I won't go through all the routes, but we've been looking at all the routes that do operate in the study area in a lot of detail at the stop level, in fact. So just to give one example of that, there's a fixed route that CAT operates called Route 5. It operates between the Barracks Road Shopping Center and Walmart via the Barracks Road, the Georgetown Road, Commonwealth Drive, Rye Road, and Berkmar Drive. It's as the corridor itself, this route is very destination rich. The service, this map is showing the ridership pre-pandemic. This map is showing ridership current. It's lower than it was pre-pandemic. The areas where ridership is still high are some of the areas with the service characteristics that we know typically generate high ridership. So Georgetown at Hessian Hills, that's an area with a lot of multifamily housing. So we're still seeing strong ridership there. And then some of the retail centers are still seeing strong ridership. And then we also look for potential issues, why ridership isn't strong everywhere, for example. So some of the issues we identified, this route is a bit circuitous in its alignment. So for example, the bus goes into Fashion Square Mall before it then comes out and goes to the Walmart. So that's a pretty circuitous alignment. In other words, people have to go out. If someone's trying to get to the Walmart, they have to go out of direction to get to the mall before they can come back, sort of backtrack and go to the Walmart. That's not ideal to have circuitous alignment like that. In the past, this route's had issues with on-time performance. And then there's also, it almost serves Albemarle High School, but not quite, so not great access there. Now, CAT is working through some proposals now to improve service. One of the proposals that they're moving forward with is changes to this route in particular, and to make it a bit less circuitous. So ending this route at Fashion Square Mall rather than going to the mall and the Walmart, and a different route would serve the Walmart. So we have that level of analysis. We've done that level of analysis for all the routes that are operating in this study area. I won't go into all of them. I know my time is sort of limited. If there's any interest in talking about other routes, we can, but I think I'll pause here and see if there's any questions about the service or the market analysis up to now.
Boris?
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Pre-pandemic, my understanding is that ridership has been not relative to Route 5. I have no knowledge about that, but ridership in general had fallen. Now, everyone can understand with the pandemic and people working more from home, there's less need for commuter kind of travel. But is that true that the ridership for CAT was on the decline for a number of years?
That is true, and it's not only for CAT, it's a national trend. Nationally, ridership peaked around 2013, 2014, all over the country, and then it started declining after that. And that coincided with a lot of different things. A lot more shopping at home with Amazon and things like that, a lot more use of shared mobility like Uber and Lyft that isn't necessarily, public transportation, but it is a service that is fairly affordable and accessible to a lot of folks. It provides flexibility for people who, especially in cases where where service isn't all that frequent. So in the CAT system, for example, a lot of the service is running hourly. John's service is running even less frequent than that. And so in those cases, and this is the case all over the country, we are seeing people transitioning to other types of service, which is why this type of service like microtransit, which I described, is really a useful tool, because in our experience, what we're finding is that there are parts of every service area that are very conducive to fixed route service, to traditional buses running on fixed routes on fixed schedules. But that environment that will support that type of service does not exist all over a community. So now, because there's this new tool that planners have to work with that didn't exist even 5 years ago, now you can make service where you invest your fixed route resources where they can do the greatest good, and then you invest other types of service resources like this microtransit service in other areas. This is generally a less expensive service model. It has a broader reach because it's not on a fixed route. It can cover a larger area, and it's on demand. So buses go, where they're needed, when they're needed. So what you're describing is true for Charlottesville, and it's true for the country overall.
Thank you.
So Boris, when you're talking about this microtransit, you're fundamentally talking about a publicly sponsored service that would essentially be competing with Uber and Lyft.
So it complements Uber and Lyft, I would say.
Okay.
Because first of all, Uber and Lyft does not exist everywhere. So in a lot of communities, Uber and Lyft tends to gravitate toward the most urban area because they get the greatest bang for their buck there. And as you go further out into suburban and rural areas, it becomes harder and harder to book an Uber or Lyft trip. And so this type of service, because as you say, it's publicly sponsored, this can exist wherever you would like it to exist. And in other words, wherever the community leaders would like it to exist. So, it doesn't have to compete with Uber and Lyft. It can complement Uber and Lyft.
The other question I had about it is, since it's looks like it was like a small bus, so if you were to, is the model that if you were asked to be picked up and taken someplace, you might actually still be sharing that bus for part of your trip with another person?
Exactly. That's another distinction between Uber and Lyft and this type of service. This is fundamentally a shared use service. So it is a public transportation service. And ideally, you would have more than one person on the vehicle. To achieve the greatest efficiency and effectiveness, you would have multiple people on the vehicle at any given time.
Just for your information, the Uber, I don't know about Lyft, but Uber service is pretty, in the Places29 area, at least, it's available and accessible. It
Sure.
works pretty well, but it's also expensive if you're, say, a low to moderate income person. It's
Correct.
It's $20-30 for a medium trip. So
That's right.
not necessarily practical for someone commuting to a working, say, to their job every day, unless they're very well paid, so.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, that actually brings up one additional point. I won't dwell on it too much, but the overall theme about this type of microtransit service is that it's a much more controlled environment, in the sense that you, the community, can set the fares. You, the community, can vet the drivers, have whatever branding you'd like, whatever vehicle you'd like. So it's just a much more predictable and controlled environment than Uber and Lyft, which is something that a lot of people are more comfortable with.
Thanks.
Okay.
So, did you have more, or?
That's okay. So yes, this study is ongoing. We had a series of public and stakeholder meetings over the past couple of weeks. So we are at the point now where we are starting to make the shift from data collection to development of recommendations. We aim to have our recommendations the November, December timeframe. And so, we may provide another update for this group if we're invited back again. But that's where we are currently.
Okay. Shannon, Karen, did you have any comments or questions on this? I know you were interested in having this on the agenda.
No, I just knew that the study was ongoing. I had seen one of the flyers advertising the public input session, and I just wanted to make sure I know the comp plan update is coming up. This might not be as important with respect to that compared to the next presentation, but I just thought the committee ought to know about it and provide any input. Thanks for asking though, Bill.
Okay. And Boris, before you go, so you're a contractor, you're not actually on county staff, right?
That's right. We're a
Okay.
consultant. Yep.
Okay. You're a consultant with a company that was contracted to do this.
Correct.
Okay. So are we pretty much done with the
That's my update. So
that's your update? Okay.
That's my update. Yes.
Okay. So we can move on to form-based code. Michaela?
We have
Yeah.
Lucinda before me.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm flipping pages too quickly. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so we got Lucinda and your
Bill?
Places 29 North Corridor study.
Hey, Bill, can I raise my hand on this one? This is also a TJPDC study, but I didn't realize this when I asked for this meeting. I heard this was coming up, but my husband is a sub-consultant on this, so I'm going to be muting myself and excusing myself for this part of the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Share my screen. And I have about 10 minutes for my presentation, and it should only take about 5 minutes. And then I really want to answer your questions. And
Can you speak up a little bit?
oh,
hard to hear
sure.
you.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I have about 10 minutes for the presentation, and it should only take 5 minutes. So stop me if you have questions, and then also if you have any questions afterwards, I want to
Okay.
make sure that we answer.
We're losing you, Lucinda.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we have time for questions. I'm gonna go through this. Thanks for allowing me the time to talk with you tonight about the 29 North Corridor study. I'm a regional planning, regional planner with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District, or the PDC. And let's see. In the presentation, I'm going to give you some background about the corridor study and give you an update on the project's progress and talk with you about the next steps. So the study was initiated by the PDC and VDOT. VDOT supports the study because the corridor has a high priority sections that are eligible to apply for funding through Smart Scale. VDOT hired Kittleson and Associates to evaluate the traffic flow and design alternatives to meet the project goals. Greene and Albemarle counties are participating in the study as partners and stakeholders. So the study area starts at Airport Road and goes north up to Deerfield Drive, which is just past Ruckersfield. It has 19 intersections in the study. Some of the intersections already have updates planned or in process. So the team will focus on the traffic demands of the intersections that don't already have solutions slated for them. The study team started the project in the spring of 2021, and we expect to present a final report in the spring of 2022. The stakeholders have met a few times, and the team developed draft project goals and is working on a no-build analysis for the corridor.
What does that mean?
A no-build analysis is when you look at if you didn't make any changes to the roads, but the community kept growing at the rate that it's currently growing at. What
Okay.
types? Yeah. So Kittleson, VDOT's consultant, will finalize the no-build analysis, and then the next step is to select priority areas to focus on, and then develop a conceptual analysis, alternatives analysis. So the alternatives are what you would do to remedy the high traffic situations if they were to occur. And basically the study is going to identify the areas of high need in the no-build analysis, and then select the priority areas and develop the alternatives. And then the final recommended alternatives will be selected based on the goals of the study, and the public will have an opportunity to comment on the goals at a September 9th public meeting. The meeting will inform the public of identified issues and concerns for the priority intersections and discuss the draft goals of the study. There's going to be 2 public meetings and a survey. So the stakeholders identified 5 draft goals that the alternatives suggested, that the alternatives will be evaluated by. The first goal is to improve safety, and the objectives of that goal are to reduce and manage vehicular conflict points, provide pedestrian crossing opportunities around commercial areas, and provide separation between vehicle and bike ped modes. The next goal is to manage congestion, which is to increase person throughput capacity, evaluate best intersection control types. Those are the solutions for the intersections. Reduce travel time variability, and make efficient use of right-of-way for all users. The next goal is to increase multimodal usability and accessibility. The objectives are to provide bicycle facilities that connect to nearby parks and other amenities, provide ADA accessible transit stops along the corridor, provide safe pedestrian crossings at target intersections. And the next goal is to support future growth.
We lost you, Lucinda.
So am I freezing up, or is?
It's your audio that
Your
kind
audio.
of fades out.
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for telling me. So the next goal is to support future growth, which is like to develop access management strategies. And that's for like, if you have a new development, how they can get on and off of 29, to support local traffic as well as regional demands, to provide transit services that offer another mode of choice for commuters. And the last goal is to support economic development. The objectives are to accommodate for prominent trucking and shipping operations, provide mode choice and access to employment opportunities, and to beautify the corridor. So the next steps in the study are to finalize the no-build analysis, which identifies the high priority areas we're going to focus on, to gather public input through the September 9th meeting, and then we'll finalize the project goals based on the input from the public, to select the high priority areas based on the data that's been gathered, and develop alternatives for those high priority areas, and gather public input through a survey and a second public meeting, and then refine the alternatives based on the public input and develop final recommendations. So I hope to see you all at the September 9th meeting at 6 p.m. It's a Zoom meeting because Charlottesville and Albemarle are still under a state of emergency. And the study team will share the conditions analysis to inform the public of identified high priority areas and discuss the draft goals of the study. Once the public input is received, the goals of the study will be finalized. There's 2 web pages that have information about the study and will be updated regularly. And they also have some of the documents from the study on them as well. One is VDOT's and then the other one is TJPDC's. So I think we have time for questions. We have a list of intersections that are deemed high priority, but we haven't selected which ones we're going to look at yet. And we also have, I believe Mr. Proctor, our VDOT engineer, is on the line too. If there's more technical questions, he can answer those. And we have Albemarle County staff is here as well.
Okay. Okay, if nobody, the other, it's really a question or, Michaela, can you make sure that we can get links to this material? You know, both at Boris and both from Boris and Lucinda?
Yes, I'll follow up with everybody and
Okay,
ask for
okay,
presentations. We'll
and
have them.
I guess I'm looking at this and this study is really not in the Places 29 area. Is that correct, Michaela? Because we kind of end a little bit north of Airport Road, correct? So most of this area of this study is outside of our range, so to speak, which doesn't mean
I
we
believe
can't.
so, but I'll defer to Lucinda on that.
Yeah, but anyway.
Bill, I just found out something from my husband. This isn't the project he's working on. The one
Oh,
that
okay.
I was thinking this would be a presentation about is, and Lucinda might be able to also, maybe if you know what TJPDC is doing on that, there's a transit vision plan for the region that's coming up that I think does include the 29 North Corridor. That kicks off sometime. And that's the one my husband would be working on. So that was kind of the one I was thinking of as the other project that the PDC might be working on that was transit related that would be of interest to this group. So my apologies if I wasn't clear about what they were. So
yeah,
okay.
there's several transit studies that are going on right now, and 2 of them the PDC is I guess project managing for that, and I will be the project manager for both of those studies. So the Albemarle County plan, which Boris presented tonight, is kind of a short-term plan. It's to help kind of get transit going in the short term, maybe the next 5 years, something that's, starts happening right away and is looking mostly at Albemarle areas. The transit vision plan is regional. It's for the entire region, and it's out maybe 45, 50 years. So they're really looking for like a big vision of transit for the entire area. So that one is also has started a little bit later than the Albemarle County one, but it is starting right now. They're working on their public engagement plan.
I don't think I'd be interested in a plan for the next 50 years. So include me.
Me neither. I don't think anybody. Yeah. It all sounds very complex and everything, but I mean, fundamentally, the 3-lane portion of Route 29 ends at Airport Road, and the basic decision there is, are we going to need to add 2 more lanes north of Airport Road? And if we do so, in terms of our area, how does that impact traffic in our area? So of course, hopefully, if some of these other transportation options that Boris mentioned succeed, maybe not, but I wouldn't be overly optimistic about that. So, okay, so September 9th, so even though this is out of our area, out of our range, it does have an impact on the Places 29 area in terms of the traffic coming into it. And I don't know, the other impact would probably be along Prophet Road, that, some of the people coming down 29 from Greene County and north of Albemarle County, they're going to peel off onto Prophet Road. And that whatever results from this study in terms of the development is probably going to impact us from that standpoint.
I will mention that the September 9th meeting is our next meeting as well, so I don't think
Uh-oh.
we'll be able to attend.
Uh-oh, okay, oh, well. Yeah, all right, anything else for Lucinda?
Charlie Proctor has his hand up, Bill.
Okay,
I don't know if he worked with Lucinda, maybe?
Yeah.
okay, I'm not seeing,
He's on the attendee list, attendees. So,
Carolyn, can you unmute him or bring him over to the panelist?
there he is, yeah, okay.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chuck Proctor. I'm the VDOT Culpeper District Planning Manager, and I'm the project manager on this for VDOT. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that we are going to look at those intersections. One of them is Airport Road and 29, as well as that section up to the Ravenna Station area. So that's part of the northern part of your area that you guys deal with. So we will be looking at those for possible solutions. I know that the North Point development had some recommendations as part of their development plan for Airport Road. So we will be looking at those to see what might be relevant and what still might be needed to be done differently than what they had recommended. So we will be looking at those areas for possible solutions.
Okay, thank you.
And if you want more information, you can go to the website, and we have all the documentation from the studies uploaded to those websites. And it includes maps, the minutes from the meetings that we've had for the stakeholders groups, as well as we will be putting the other documents up there as they are developed.
Okay,
And the survey will be a MetroQuest survey, so it's going to be an online survey that you can just go on. It'll step you through the process to answer various questions about what you think the goals are, and if you are agreeable to those, and what your thoughts on are what we're studying and if it's appropriate.
okay. I'm going back to Boris's presentation, and when he was talking about fixed route bus service and access, in terms of sidewalks and everything. I think one of the obstacles we have in our area basically is that with Seminole Trail, Route 29 being a 6-lane highway, it regardless of whether there are red lights with walk signals or not, it's very difficult to get across them. And I really don't know how people, on the east side of Route 29 would be able to get to the west side to get a southbound bus. It just seems, a difficult task, and and I know from my experience in Northern Virginia is that when you make these pedestrian crossings few and far between, people do have a tendency to shortcut them, and that leads to accidents, and that's not what we want to have. So I don't know what the solution is. I just hope that is being considered when in all your studies and efforts. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to look at that as we move forward. I know that's a problem. We have a pedestrian bridge funded down in the hydraulic area, and that's going to be the first one on the corridor. So if there's enough demand and we can justify the cost, we could put some additional ones on the corridor northward, so to try to address that. So we're incorporating transit stops and shared use paths to get access to those where that bridge is going to be. So hopefully that'll provide a amenity to the area. And we will look for opportunities in the northern area, both for transit, better transit stops, additional park and ride facilities, as well as shared use paths and sidewalks to connect to the adjacent residential developments.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on transportation? Anybody? Just speak up. All right. Thanks, Lucinda and Boris. And Mr. Parker? So, okay, so now we've got Michaela, you're going to talk to us about the form-based code.
Yes,
We're a
I
little
can-
behind on that, I'm sorry, but go ahead.
That's okay. I can speed up things if we need to. We're switching gears a little bit and moving away from transportation while it's related to more of a land use and zoning presentation. And I'm actually going to play a short video because we made a video a couple years ago to introduce this concept, and I think it's helpful in communicating what form-based code is. Actually, sorry, there's a trick here for making sure you hear the audio as well.
Communities across the United States grow and develop thanks to a little-known policy tool called the zoning code. The zoning code influences everything from building heights to signage. Understanding zoning is key to understanding how development happens in Albemarle County. In this video, we're going to start by explaining the basics of zoning, describe a new type of zoning called form-based code, and share why we're considering it for the Rio 29 area of our community.
Most cities and counties have laws about what you can build and where. What a property owner can build depends on where or in what zone their property is in. Zoning originated from localities seeking to use their police powers or their ability to regulate and enforce order for the health, safety, and welfare of its residents. Some of the first codes, like New York City's 1916 code, sought to regulate development for aims like ensuring that light could reach city streets and establish building heights and stepbacks that ultimately created the city's iconic wedding cake-style skyscrapers. During the 1920s, zoning started to spread across the U.S. with the Standard State Zoning Enabling Act and the 1926 Supreme Court decision in Euclid v. Ambler, where the town of Euclid, Ohio set up zoning to separate unlike uses. Single-use, or Euclidean zoning, became the dominant type of zoning throughout the U.S. While Euclid wanted to prevent industrial uses from encroaching on residential areas, these codes eventually grew to support auto-centric and suburban development patterns, limiting housing and transportation options. Planners and policymakers have found that single-use zoning regulations make the walkable, vibrant places we love difficult to build today. As a primarily rural area, Albemarle County didn't adopt zoning until 1969, at a time when suburban Charlottesville was starting to grow. Charlottesville's growth drove development in the county's rural areas, stoking fears of annexation. The current code and zoning map were adopted in 1980, which set an expectation for continued and directed growth in our development areas, and prioritized rural area and watershed protection. Yet in many ways, this code never planned for an urban, rather than suburban, Albemarle County. Today's zoning code consists of two basic parts, the map and the regulations. So let's start with the map. There are 25 zoning districts in Albemarle County, and assigned to each parcel are a district that has its own set of rules regarding use and intensity. The largest categories include rural, residential, commercial, planned districts, and industrial. The county's zoning map not only separates properties by use, but also by intensity of uses. For example, in the R1, R6, and R15 residential zones, the increasing number indicates the approximate number of units allowed per acre, and thus the higher number indicates an increasing level of residential density. In addition, you'll often see overlay zones, which add additional restrictions and regulations within them. Some examples include the entrance corridors and the steep slopes overlay districts. Now, moving to the regulations themselves, the zoning code contains sections for each district or color on the map. The zoning code lists all the permitted uses for each district, such as clothing, apparel, and shoe shops, as well as retail, nurseries, and greenhouses. Some uses are classified as special uses, which aren't allowed outright, but require approval from the Board of Supervisors on a case-by-case basis.
That's a really quick overview of the zoning code. It works to ensure that development happens in a reasonable, predictable manner and minimizes impact to adjacent property owners. Yet civic leaders, planners, and community members across the United States are beginning to recognize the challenges and limitations of single-use zoning.
Form-based code is an alternative type of zoning that moves away from the segregation paradigm by prioritizing the size and shape of buildings over the use. It works to use land more efficiently by promoting a variety of development types within the same area, from storefronts to housing to public green spaces and plazas. The main purpose of form-based code is to proactively regulate the physical form and character of new development to help the community realize its vision for an area, rather than reacting to each new development proposal on a case-by-case basis or not at all.
When we say form, we're really talking about the physical characteristics of a place. This type of zoning code may include regulations on building height, mass, setback or build to lines, and building orientation. These regulations emphasize the qualities that affect site design and how our community experiences a space. While use is still regulated, form-based code acknowledges that compatible uses change over time.
So why are we talking about form-based code now? Right now, Rio 29 is a place designed for cars, not people. However, we have heard from the community that their vision is to see this area become a vibrant and diverse mixed-use community with interesting character and a human-scaled environment. About 39% of Rio 29's land area is dedicated to surface parking lots that are rarely more than halfway full. It's home to few sidewalks and even fewer bike lanes, but it's also home to one of the county's busiest bus stops, and it is strategically located within easy access to major employment centers such as downtown Charlottesville, the University of Virginia, and the Route 29 corridor. When urban land is our community's most valuable asset, there are opportunities for underutilized spaces to provide what's known as infill development, filling in these spaces with active uses such as housing, office and commercial that create vibrant streets and provide new places for our community to live and work.
From 2016 to 2018, Albemarle County staff worked collaboratively with community members and stakeholders to develop the Rio 29 Small Area Plan, which is a detailed plan for the area's future development and investment with specific transportation, land use, and urban design recommendations. This plan was adopted by the Board of Supervisors in December 2018 and works to achieve the vision of Rio 29 as a multimodal hub with connected streets, a vibrant mixed-use community with interesting character, and a place enhanced through conservation. The Rio 29 Small Area Plan's recommendations include update the zoning ordinance to allow for the desired form and mix of uses, pursue form-based code as a mechanism to promote the desired form, find the appropriate balance between regulation and flexibility, regulation to achieve the desired form, and flexibility to accommodate market changes and a mixture of uses.
So where are we now, and what can you do? We're only just
I'm pausing there because the what's next is 2 years old, so that's not current anymore. But the video there is meant to be more of an intro to form-based code, and I have a few slides to talk about the work that's happened over the past 2 years and next steps for the project. This group had received these presentations in the past, pre-pandemic, though there's a whole new group of people, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Slides here. And as was mentioned during the video, the Rio 29 area that's referred to is just under 400 acres of land that's around the Route 29 and Rio Road intersection. I'm sorry about my dog in the background.
Okay.
The small area plan was adopted in 2018, and the vision was stated in that video, but highlights are complete streets, meaning streets that are designed for people walking, biking, riding transit, and driving cars, as well as sustainable and usable public spaces, and then diversity of uses in the area. And that's where there's a recommendation to pursue form-based code. And so the Board of Supervisors, after this plan was adopted, directed staff to start working on this. So throughout 2019, rigorous community engagement process that involved staff working internally on technical working groups. So they would focus on something like streets and research best practices for form-based codes and provide that information for the public workshops and community engagement. There were a variety of opportunities for folks to be involved, from public workshops to online forums, as well as planning commission and board work sessions. And that work in 2019 resulted in a framework, what we called a framework for the form-based code, which was essentially an outline with details on what the form-based code should include. And this was supported by the Board of Supervisors, but was not a legal document. It didn't have all of the zoning language, the diagrams, the images that were really needed to have a legal ordinance. And so that is the work that county staff has been doing throughout 2020, is taking this process that has been ongoing for a few years, starting from concepts to an outline to now really drafting an ordinance. And we've been working on that throughout 2020, and actually worked with the Form-Based Code Institute, which is a part of Smart Growth America, and they provide peer review services. So they reviewed this draft code, a team of 8 to 9 people, and gave us their feedback on what was working, just technical support. Scenarios were produced. So the image that's on the left side of this screen here is a hypothetical scenario, meaning that an architecture firm looked at our ordinance and came up with what could possibly be built in Route 29 based on the ordinance. So this isn't a proposal that will be built. It's just an example of something that could be based on this proposed zoning ordinance. So in summary, that was a lot about the process, but the code itself is currently written as an optional overlay district, which means that anyone with a property in the Rio 29 area could continue to develop using their existing zoning that is there today, or they opt into this form-based code. And after they do that, they would be required to meet all of the requirements of the form-based code and couldn't go back to their old district. Optional approach was really supported by community members throughout the process and property owners in the area. So this is an example of what could be built at the corner of Rio Road and Route 29, the northwest corner. And here is the zoning ordinance has a map, just like the Broward County has a map, and there are 3 different character areas. The character areas reflect different building standards, just different standards for each of these that they relate to one another, but in red is the core area, which is the most dense, most urban forms of development would be in this area, with retail, commercial on the first floor. And then the white character area is called the flex, and there would be a broader range of building types and uses longer block sizes, transitioning to the blue edge character area, which is which is right adjacent to the residential areas there. So they have the smallest building heights, the smallest forms of buildings. So 3 different character areas are proposed for the Rio 29 area in the form-based code. Each of them has building design standards about how buildings meet the street, what streets look like, and what civic spaces look like and include. A key difference in the form-based code is that there's a use table instead of that extensive list that was shown in the video, really specifying shoe shops and garden stores. This has categories: retail, commercial, residential. And so in the future, if there is a new use that doesn't exist today, it will fit within a category and allows that development process to happen in a more streamlined manner. That was a lot of information, and we will shortly have the full code online. Share that link with you all if you'd like to review in detail. There is a public hearing for this proposed ordinance on September 1st. Reminded time and time again by consultants that we've worked with and people that have done form-based code work is that zoning codes are really one tool to support redevelopment of an area. So county staff is recommending that the county continue to consider investment in public infrastructure like streets and public spaces in the area to continue to encourage redevelopment of the spaces there. I hope I didn't go too far over time, but it's all I have, and lots of information. I'm happy to answer questions.
I'll watch for people raising their hand or just speak up. We don't have that many people here. So if you have a question or a comment.
Michaela, I'd be interested in reading whatever you post regarding this. It's certainly very interesting, and it's certainly something that I think most of us kind of favor in principle.
Sure, yes. We're just finalizing the draft for the board today, so we'll have that online. That is my first thing in the morning.
Okay. Okay.
And I see Karen has her hand up.
Yeah,
Karen?
I always have my in the front row. I'm curious, Michaela, are they just adopting the text of the form-based code, or will there actually be a zoning map amendment to overlay the form-based code?
There's two things that they would be voting on: the zoning text and then the map, which is the map in red, white, and blue that I was sharing before.
Okay, so in that case, any landowner, I was a bit confused. So they have the choice of developing under the existing zoning, so that's going to remain, and this is an option. Would they have to go through a rezoning or public hearing process? I know a lot of localities that have done this are localities that have impact fees and that have implemented form-based code and just actually rezoned it themselves because there wasn't a need. Well, our proffer system is not what it used to be, but there wasn't a need for if there were road improvements that needed to be made, that was generally the development community doing that in Virginia. So I was just trying to clarify how any infrastructure improvements associated with anything related to form-based code. Although this is an area that's pretty rich in infrastructure, like you said, the streetscape, that sort of thing is not maybe here. It would be more urban.
I think perhaps I'll try and clarify the optional piece and then take a pass at the infrastructure piece. Early on in this process, we heard a lot of feedback from property owners in the development community that an optional district was preferred to allow transition for the area. Communities that rezone properties to have a form-based code, and that's fairly common. So the expectation is that in the code there are street requirements and there are block sizes that are smaller than the suburban forms that are in the majority of the area now. So that would be required by property owners to make those changes. That being said, this is a strategic area, economic development, and there are opportunities for public-private partnerships for large investments. So we're county staff are willing to explore opportunities there, and that would be as well for those public-private partnerships.
So, okay. It seems like it's a pretty long, drawn-out process. I'm presuming this is the first area that you're attempting to do this in. Is that correct?
Yes, this is the first for Albemarle County.
Well, for Albemarle County, yeah. And when you said you were working on it in 2018, and I'm picturing that area in my mind, and I'm thinking, it's 3 years later and I haven't seen any impact, but now I understand it just takes a while to get this, but if it's voluntary for the property owners, then, so they don't necessarily have to adopt this, or they can use the old zoning codes. And as long as they're within that, as long as they're not asking for a zoning revision, it's a little hard for me to see how this vision is going to be realized. If it's a voluntary thing, part of the property owners. I mean,
that is a fair concern with an optional district. The advantage of the form-based code is that a property owner would have a much wider array of uses that they can develop, which is likely to be a large incentive for them.
Okay.
That's not to say what they might do or not do, but rather than go through a rezoning also too.
So, and I think that can I envision that, this same process would move on to other areas like Places 29 North? That in that case, it might be, the process might be a little quicker, and since, it won't be the first time we go through it.
Well, I can't promise anything, but I do think that, going through this the first time, that is probably a safe assumption that took the longest.
Okay.
The
Okay.
form-based codes in other areas would be definitely at the direction of the board of supervisors. So in my purview, but we will have to see how this works.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Okay.
I just have a real quick question. When this first started, I remember it being like a 5-year plan, I assume with COVID that has been pushed further.
The small area plan so usually our long range planning documents have a 20-year lifespan, but they have prioritized things that are recommended within the first 5 to 10 years. And then after that, subsequently lower priorities in the planning documents. So maybe that answers your question somewhat. I think that it has a longer lifespan than 5 years.
Okay. So the first step is getting the form-based code, and then okay. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Karen.
I just was curious, were there any economic studies? I know clearly the mall is suffering and it's sold, and that area kind of is ripe for redevelopment. Was there any, or has there been any discussion from the county's economic development folks about how immediate the interest might be in redeveloping that area? And I'm just curious, about that.
I would need to follow up with them during the small area planning effort. I need to look back at the appendix, but I believe there was.
I can look at it. I just didn't know if anybody's just waiting for this to be adopted and approved because they're waiting to submit a proposal or something. I'm curious to see how it's going to work. And I think you're right. A lot of developers would find this would provide greater flexibility. And hopefully that's not an area with a lot of residents, and it's not a 24-hour activity area. So hopefully it can be probably a good redevelopment project that kind of implements the neighborhood model more specifically and on a smaller scale. So I think that's all good stuff and would support these transit proposals we're talking about and that sort of thing as well. So thank you.
Tony, did you have your hand up?
No.
Oh, I saw your hand wave there. Okay. Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to put on the agenda was this was communications and outreach discussion. And the reason I did that was because, one of our tasks as a committee is to, kind of let the people in the area know what the county's planning for them. And as you know, I have been writing articles for a local, the Forest Lakes magazine, but that doesn't reach that many people. And also, it doesn't, like I have to write that up tomorrow, but it won't for my article for that, but it won't appear until in September. So it's not particularly current. So the only the two ideas that I had was, could we do the same thing? In other words, write up a little summary of the meeting and try and post that on that Nextdoor website? I guess the question is, do you think that would be a good idea? At least it's something, I don't think it could be, I'd have to be careful in terms of not labeling it as some sort of official communications from the county. I think, but I'll check with Michaela on that. But that people do read that Nextdoor, and it does get pretty wide circulation in terms of the neighborhoods in Places 29 North. Are you familiar with that sort of thing, Michaela?
I'm going to step in here just real quick.
Sure.
I would suggest using the Nextdoor and putting the link to the county calendar so that they can go in video or your page on the county calendar so that they can go what you're doing and if they want to get involved.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Because until I could get into that county calendar, it's hard to know what's going on unless you see that county calendar. Let me write that down. Hold on.
Also, a link I can send you, Bill, about signing up for the county newsletter, and people can select the topics that they're interested in, and they're automatically on an email list.
Okay. Yeah. I did that, and yeah, you do get a lot. So that's the site where you can get the newsletters. Okay. I think, if people saw that, more people would sign up for it, because especially if they're seeing it on Nextdoor, then they just click the link and they're there. Whereas the article in the magazine, you print the links, but, then somebody's got to copy them onto their internet. So that it's kind of difficult, and I don't think people do that. The other thought I had was that I don't think that the local newspaper, the Daily Progress, would be interested in just the Places29 stuff. But I was wondering if there was some way we could coordinate with the other committees and maybe generate up a little article or periodic articles on what all of these various committees are doing. And that would basically require coordination with the other committee chairs. But I think if we had something like that, I don't know if the Daily Progress would be interested in putting that in or not. Occasionally they do have an article about, local developments. I think they've had a couple articles about RST. So, just wanted to get some feedback on that.
Maybe Seville would be interested.
Oh, the free paper.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Sue.
I think, I'm not sure how many of our folks read Seville, but Seville, I like your Daily Progress idea. The other thing, the Charlottesville Tomorrow group has a pretty robust digital, electronic newsletter. Maybe they would include the article. We can also put the links in that.
It's Seville Tomorrow, huh?
Charlottesville Tomorrow.
Okay.
Or it might be Seville Tomorrow, but I think it's Charlottesville Tomorrow.
Charlottesville, okay.
But at the Daily Progress, the reporter, Allison Rabel, I know has done a lot of land use development articles. So she might be a good place to start.
Is that Label?
It's WRABEL, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Allison Rabel. So she's with the Daily Progress.
Yeah. And just as a PS, I feel like the Forest Lakes Community Association would put articles in its newsletter.
Yeah. Okay. I can check with Forest Lakes on that. Yeah. That's actually probably a little more current than that Forest Lakes magazine.
Yes.
Okay.
That's can I ask you one reason? I was talking to Bill about this. This is one of our responsibilities, is to bring feedback from the citizens. I do know, and maybe Michaela can help with this. I believe there is a requirement for developers when they submit a rezoning proposal to meet with the community. Am I right about that, Michaela? And I think one of the ways that that requirement is fulfilled, I don't know if it's the only way, is when these development applications are brought forward to the Citizens Advisory Committee. And I don't know how members of the community are notified that a particular application is coming forward to a CAC, I think. And one of the concerns I had is a couple of meetings, you've had a lot of intense interest. In others, you may have only one or two folks. And it's hard if this group is supposed to fulfill that community input. Not hearing from, you might hear from a couple of people. So I don't know where there is a chance for a developer to meet with a homeowners association who may be particularly affected by a project and that sort of thing. Because I feel like there's two levels of communication that needs to occur. It's like, okay, well, what are the development specifics? And then what is the broader sense of how this application fits overall into the comprehensive plan or the long-term plan for 29 North? And I know with Bill, I was a bit confused about, well, is our role to go out and get the input, say a Willow Glen application or something like that is on our agenda. Do we need to be sure that the Willow Glen people know that the application is going forward, or the Willow Glen people having a meeting? I'm just using that as an example. Do those folks actually know there's a proposed development in their neighborhood, or only the HOAs or the adjacent property owners being notified? So I was trying to figure out what our role is there. And because I think you've seen in several developments recently, and these are the ones that the newspapers tend to focus on the most, and you'll notice on a night when we have something that's an application that's attracted a lot of attention, Allison Rabel is on there recording our meetings. There is a whole dialogue going on Twitter about the CACs in Albemarle County, some of which is not very flattering to citizens in particular communities. And the more modern ways of communication are Twitter, Instagram, those platforms. Facebook is dead. So there's an awareness, but I'm afraid that the only issues that get attention in the newspaper are the ones that are by their nature controversial. I know the Crozet CAC has been the subject of a fair amount of criticism because of the opinions that they expressed relative to the comp plan update. So there's this whole other running dialogue in the community. For example, there was live Twitter updates on one of our meetings recently. Our photographs were on the Twitter feed, and so I don't know that people are aware. Well, I'm just saying I became aware of it, and it's not, I'm just saying we need to know what our role is and make sure that other people in the community know what that role is. We also need to be aware of how the CACs are being viewed, because there is a lot of interest in some of the development applications for a good reason, but that's why I was looking for some clarification. If it is our job to represent the HOAs, is it our job, to make sure that they get the word out so they can come to the meeting or the public hearing, because that's what the public hearings are for. Sorry, Michaela.
No, that's fine.
It's okay. I just want to clarify that for rezonings and special use permits, letters are mailed to property owners around those applications.
Are they just the adjacent property owners, the ones that have
not directly adjacent, beyond directly adjacent, not just touching a property boundary,
like 1,000 feet beyond? Or
yes, there's a few different standards depending on whether it's the rural area or development area, and I'm happy to share that. But they're not told about the CAC meeting. It's about the planning commission hearing. They are told about the CAC. Oh, good. So a letter goes out, and typically the CAC meetings are used because they're already happening monthly, and it's a convenient forum for those to occur, assuming CAC members are also interested. And then that certainly doesn't invalidate what you're saying, Karen, about sharing it with other folks that might be interested and not on that mailing list or on the CAC. So well, I'm glad to know that there is some, because I would hate for them to say, oh, well, we went to that citizens committee meeting and nobody said anything, but if you're not somebody who lives right there and may know more about the specifics of a parcel or whatever, we are going to have development. That's one reason I wanted to be on this committee, is things are changing in Albemarle County. It is absolutely a fact that existing residents are going to have concerns. They're going to voice them in different ways. It's also a fact that there are many, many goals the county is trying to implement. Affordable housing, better transit. We're hearing all these plans that
may help in the long run relieve some of the pressures people are feeling now. But I think people feel like, oh, there's all this development and nothing's, it's going to keep developing like this. And so, I'm hoping that that's one of the things the CACs can do is make sure that we not only communicate about the short-term things, but the long-term plans, and the comp plan revision is coming up. So I hope we'll get the word out about that as well.
Okay, anything else on communications? Any other? I mean, I'm glad I brought this up because it's like I myself wasn't aware of all these tools that we possibly can use. So I may follow up with an email to you all to see if I can get some volunteers to help at least make some initial contacts with Seville Weekly and Seville Tomorrow and that sort of thing. And I was not aware, technically I'm on Twitter, but I don't really use it that much. I don't know about the rest of you. So I wasn't even aware that we were the subject of anything on Twitter. Karen, you're telling me Facebook is like, forget Facebook, right?
I was surprised she said that. I just found, luckily my photo isn't on what I just searched. I'm on Twitter all the time, but I guess maybe I'm not following the right people.
Okay, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if there's stuff on there, Janelle, can you try and, let me know how I can get it, like get that feed, or maybe we should have, should we have our own Twitter feed?
Does the county have one, Karen? Do you know, is it certain people that are always posting? Like I just see a certain person who said, this is who was here at the meeting and had taken a screenshot, but I don't know.
Interesting screenshot. And I think there was a point being made there. And so, I think, just an awareness that we always are in a public meeting. These are being recorded. And it's fine your opinions may not be the same as other people, and you may find yourself in a public situation where somebody is commenting on an opinion you shared without your knowledge. So
yeah,
that's why,
yeah.
I am not on Twitter. I am not on Instagram. I purposely stay off because, my first name doesn't help me with anything anymore.
Okay, no.
Just the fact I'm named Karen means I am off the island. So
yeah.
For any comments.
Okay, so yeah, I'll follow up on that and see if we can, myself, and see if I can find something on Twitter. I'm not a real expert on that, but if people are commenting on what we're doing on Twitter, then I think we need to be aware of it and maybe respond to their comments, and their concerns. And
I caution you, Bill, it's a whole new world out there, and you can waste a lot of time. The idea is just to make sure that if information is out there, we are inviting this process to be as inclusive as possible and making people aware of the opportunities to provide their input.
Okay. Oh, so that was a bigger can. I opened up a bigger can than I intended to, but that's okay. Okay, anything else? If not, we can, we don't have either one of the liaisons here. Like I say, B is either in or coming back from France, and I don't know about the liaison from the Planning Commission. He didn't contact us at all, so whatever.
One thing that I think Mr. Dean said earlier, maybe Bill, my husband, who does a lot of transit planning, has said and maybe Bill too, said there's been a real problem getting older people interested in very long range plans. And I know you guys may not be here, but there is wisdom to share. There is experience. And even though you probably can't envision ever using these facilities or things, a 20, 30-year plan, a 50-year plan won't be in my lifetime either, but all of that input is valuable. Especially a lot of these transit services, some of the micro transit services, imagine yourself trying to use that. And I know it's very technologically challenging. So if we're going to begin to rely on those things for older folks until there's self-driving cars and things like that, people need to hear what makes those things useful to people who have experience trying to use some alternative forms of transportation. So that's just my plug to say, whether you think you'll be here for the 30, 40, 50-year plan, please share
It's still, yeah.
because they're valuable. And there's a lot you could say about how things got so messed up with zoning.
And I know it's not on the agenda, but I guess for those of you that are not in the Forest Lakes community, there will be a public meeting with B. Kirtley on August 30th with regard to the RS2 development at 6 p.m. And if you're interested in, you know, basically they'll be, you know, basically presenting their issues with the RST development to B and trying to get some feedback from her. So if you haven't heard about that up till now, and I think Tony probably you wouldn't be getting the Forest Lake newsletter. No, Jimmy, I'm sorry, Jimmy, you wouldn't be getting that. Tony, you no. Okay, so you know, and I was going to put it in the Hollymead newsletter that should go out next week. So we should, you know, if you weren't aware of that, just it's August 30th, 6 p.m. and it's at the Forest Lakes North Pavilion. You know,
Okay, thanks.
Which is by their pools. Okay, so are we done? Can we officially adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry, Michaela, my mistake. I didn't look at this thing. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 27th, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And this will be a joint CAC meeting. So it's a meeting where every CAC member is invited, and there'll be a presentation. It'll be online. Do you know what generally the subject's going to be, Michaela?
Equity in Albemarle County. We have an Office of Equity and Inclusion, and that's tentatively. I'll share more details as soon as I have them on the agenda with everybody. So we're announcing that bill. And a quick note on any upcoming meetings that you all might attend. Just a reminder that if there's 3 or more of you there, it becomes a public meeting.
Right.
So.
Okay.
And if you need any help sorting through that.
So the question is, before we go, and it didn't occur to me, this meeting is September 27th, and our regular meeting is the second Thursday. Was the county's intent that this joint meeting would replace our regular meeting?
Yes.
Or is it in addition to?
Yes.
It will replace our regular meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Michaela, could you just clarify if Bill, Sue, Karen, Janelle, and I go to the meeting that Bill was talking about on August 30th, does that constitute a meeting of the CAC?
Only if you talk about, I think only if they talk, I think if they're going to something that they belong to, that's outside of this, they really can't talk to one another about CAC business.
Oh.
I think they're okay. If you guys don't, I think you might want to clarify that, Michaela, but I think something like this, they're not going to represent the CAC. They're going as homeowners from that area. So we might need to check into that.
I would like to clarify because the RST residences is a topic that has been before the CAC before. And I'm not an attorney, so I will check.
Okay, thank you.
To clarify, I will not be at that meeting. If you recall, I'm recused.
Yeah, right. We understand, Karen.
So I won't be there.
And you were probably aware of it anyway, so. I think it's just Janelle and Jimmy that would not have gotten that information.
I will be there.
For my household to be participating or attending that meeting. So.
Okay, good enough. Yeah, you know, yeah, Michaela will clarify that. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer either, so I'm gonna let Michaela check with the lawyer and let us know. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so, unless anybody has anything else, good night all. We are officially adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.